for the Triangle Initiative, and this morning we're going to present two projects that are central to this initiative. But first I want to say a little bit about the Triangle Initiative itself. The Triangle Initiative is an effort to bring together faculty research, classroom teaching, and community impact. The Triangle projects seek to use new media to extend university research, address critical social needs, and transform the experience of students at Columbia. Triangle projects form the basis of classroom activities that are authentic and are good preparation for students' lives as professionals. CCNMTL's mission is to purposefully use technology to improve teaching and learning at Columbia. We are people who want to help our clients use technology effectively. The Triangle Initiative is a significant extension of this mission, allowing CCNMTL to look outward towards the larger world, connecting us and Columbia's students to issues of global significance. We hope that by bringing together the problems and needs of the world outside the university walls with the often compartmentalized university worlds of research and classroom teaching, that we can improve student engagement and make a difference in the world. Today we're going to look at two Triangle projects that are close to launching, Multimedia Connect and the Collateral Consequences Calculator. Two of our partners are here, Dr. Susan Witte and Professor Conrad Johnson from the Schools of Social Work and Law, respectively. Susan Witte is an associate professor at the Columbia University School of Social Work and associate director of the Columbia University Social Intervention Group. Her research and teaching focuses on the development and testing of prevention and treatment interventions that target the co-occurrence of HIV/AIDS risk behaviors, substance abuse, and interpersonal violence among vulnerable populations. Currently, Dr. Witte is principal investigator on several NIH and CDC-funded studies. She is the PI of Multimedia Connect, which is a couples-based HIV intervention. Multimedia Connect is a collaboration with CCNMTL and is due to launch in community-based organizations in early November. It's already been making an impact in classrooms in the School of Social Work, from classes in clinical skills to tools for field placement students. So, Susan is going to introduce Multimedia Connect.
Good morning. Thank you for attending our session. So I have about 3 minutes to share with you 15 years of research and development, so pay attention, because I'm going to talk really fast. We developed Connect, which is the name of both a research project that took place between 1997 and 2001, and a program meaning a series of sessions, 2-hour sessions, 6 that take place over 6 weeks. You would meet once a week. And we developed Connect in 1997, the social intervention group at the School of Social Work, because what we were learning in the field was that single-gender prevention efforts weren't working. And we know, actually I should start by saying our goal is to help eradicate new HIV infections. And if you've been following public health and epidemiology in the last 6 months after the International Conference in Mexico, what we know is that our prevention programs are not working largely. Our behavioral intervention programs that we've spent 20 years developing aren't working. So this is an effort to move us into a better position to disseminate more prevention programs to make a bigger difference. So we developed this program as a relationship-based program, bringing together men and women in heterosexual relationships to try to reduce new infections among women especially, particularly in communities of color where we know there's a disproportionate number of infections continuing to take place. And this program was developed by the SIG team back in 1997, then it was tested and demonstrated to be efficacious with funding from the National Institutes of Mental Health. And when we finished the program testing, and we knew that what we had is a program that would work both for single gender, but also with couples together. We realized that in order for it to really be most efficacious and effective in the community, what we needed to do is disseminate it more broadly. And so in the early 2000s, 2003, we were introduced to the Center for New Media Teaching and Learning, and when they met with us and we spent 2 years of discovery and development work together, what we found is that there are ways that technology can help us to extend what we do in the field to teach these skills in order to improve our learning. So In terms of developing the intervention, Connect, and testing it, there are about a dozen papers that have been published that sort of describe that in detail, and if you're at all interested, we can give you the bibliography afterwards. But to bring you up to speed, what we've done in the last 3 years together with the Center for New Media is to take this program, which in a traditional format is essentially 4 large binders, literally 4 large binders. One would be a script that would direct a clinician, a social worker or a human services worker like me, sitting with a couple who comes in to an HIV services agency for prevention intervention and guide me through a series of exercises with handouts and with posters and with skills building tools to direct learning. That traditional version has been packaged by the Centers for Disease Control as what's called a DEBI. Most of you don't know what a DEBI is, but it's a fancy acronym for Diffusion of Effective Behavioral Interventions. And in the state of human services, particularly HIV prevention, the state of the art in disseminating is the DEBIs. DEBIs are 20 programs that are efficacious packaged by the CDC that you can pay if you're a community-based organization or be funded to be trained in implementing. And so given that that's the state of the art, given that the state of the art isn't effective, we've taken this traditional package that we have and worked with CCNMTL to translate the package into a multimedia, fully web-based program so that each of the exercises was translated through a series of meetings to come up with an interactive series of either interactive games or videos to enhance the learning with the skills building. And our current goal is to test the traditional package against this multimedia tool among 80 agencies in New York State. So we've received some major funding from the National Institutes of Mental Health to do a dissemination project. 40 of the agencies will be trained to do the traditional version, 40 will receive the multimedia version. And as Jess shared with you, we're very excited to say that we're launching this in about 3 weeks. It's our first training. And so we'll do these trainings over the course of the next year, and we'll be looking at adoption, levels of adoption. And we really believe that this is a new frontier of prevention science, and that based on the lessons learned from this trial, we'll be able to enhance dissemination of HIV prevention and other human service issues. So what we want to do now actually is show you the multimedia tool. And Jess is going to start the demonstration.
Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is ask you to think about the context of use for this. What you're looking at would appear on a laptop that would be in a room with a facilitator and a couple. So 3 people would be looking at the screen together, and sometimes the facilitator would be interacting with the couple. They would not be looking at the screen at all, and sometimes the couple would be interacting with the screen, sometimes all 3 of them. So that's what this is. This is not something that someone would just access online and do something with on their own. So what you're looking at right now is the beginning of session 1 of in the context of this whole interface. So I'm just going to show you the different aspects of the interface before Susan and I get into showing you the activities. First of all, you see 2 tabs at the top here, Client Tools and How To. And what this is this is actually taking the script and the instructions for the facilitator and providing them as a script that they can access at any time during the process of the intervention. So this forms a scaffolding for the facilitator. One of our goals was to make an intervention that would be easier for people to deliver, people that maybe didn't have as much clinical training as the faculty at the social intervention group who originally tested this, people who maybe are volunteers who don't necessarily have social work training. It would be easier for them to get through the intervention in a way that has fidelity to the original intervention. So for each activity they have a script. Also, another thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that the computer did not take precedence over the human interaction. So there are two things that we did to make sure that that would not happen. One is that many activities, in fact, do not have multimedia. The introduction to session 1, for instance, does not have multimedia. That's why there's simply an image here which indicates, what you're supposed to be doing right now is having a conversation with the facilitator. The other thing that we provided is actually a pause button, so that if people were too mesmerized by the screen, you can just blank it out. And then you can go back to the session when it's actually time to go back to using the computer. Another thing that's important and is new with the multimedia version is the fact that we're providing the couple with a journal. And the journal encapsulates both things that they learn each week with information that they've entered about themselves. So anything that they put, dates that they're supposed to return, their social support network map that you'll see later how that's made, any activity notes that they take along the way end up in their journal, and they actually get this book to take home with them at the end of each week and then compiled at the end of the 6 weeks. Another thing that we wanted to show you, and I'm not going to play any of these videos because we don't have time right now, but there is a facilitator skills area with extensive video library of training videos that we shot, and also information about delivering the intervention and general facilitation skills. So what you see in terms of this interface is something that we're hoping will help people deliver this more effectively and just in an easier way. The other thing that we have here is the what we call the roadmap, which is essentially, if you were on a website, is the navigation of the website. But if you compare this, to how this would have been delivered originally, it was in a binder, and no one in the room could really see a whole picture of where they were and where they were going. So this navigation shows, okay, this is what we're doing next, this is how many more things we have to do. The checkboxes check off as you go through the activities, so everyone is sort of on the same page with where they are in the session. So,
and I just want to interrupt for 1 second and say that the reason why extending the range of facilitators that could actively use the tool is really important, I think, is that currently the dissemination process in the United States assumes that there's expertise, and I have to train you in this expertise, and then you can do this intervention. So we're trying to take the scientific randomized clinical trial model and go from efficacy to effectiveness trials, and we don't have the data yet. But we're skipping over the fact that there are these community-based agencies across the United States and many people who have expertise in risk reduction and with working with the communities. So what we're trying to do is build a bridge to the expertise that's local. And if we can do one training with an organization and then give them this tool that has a lot of the retraining methods built into it, then it's much easier to extend that learning, to continue to scaffold for existing facilitators to get better if they drift, but also for them to implement the training with their colleagues who have expertise. So we're really, one of our major goals is really to create something that could be more effectively used within the agencies so that the community benefits more widely.
So I think we're going to move on to showing the activities.
Yep.
So I'm going to run the computer, and Susan is going to talk about
some of the activities we want to show you.
So.
Okay. Go ahead. We're going to start with, this is protective behaviors, right? So you need to, in order to understand, this is based on the AIDS risk reduction model, which is one of many health, education, and cognitive and behavioral learning theories. And the AIDS risk reduction model assumes that you need the information first. So rather than say in a didactic way, these are all the things you need to know about risk and risky behaviors, we've created an interactive game where the couple would sit together with the mouse and they can explore her body and his body to see where are some of the locations of fluids and relative level of infectivity of those fluids and access to them. Then they can move on to the next part of the exercise and connect body parts. So And this is where I do a disclaimer to say that there's sexual content in our presentation, so please don't be shocked or disturbed at any of the terms that we use. Or if you are so sensitive, I want to warn you now to leave the room. So we would connect for different behaviors, sexual behaviors, to see what's the relative level of risk, to do some psychoeducation. And it's fun. It's fun to sit together and play with the models, and it's interactive. And the facilitator would let the couple go through this exercise and then talk through and correct any misconceptions. So it's just a simple psychoeducational tool. And I think the next thing we wanted to show is the speaker-listener technique.
All right.
The speaker-listener technique is, well, an essential part of learning. We know from social cognitive theory and from the AIDS risk reduction model is that you need to be able to communicate about these things with your partner. Oh, we were teaching women to use condoms and saying, here, take this to your partner and tell me that you need to use it. And the women said, oh, that's great, but we don't talk about grocery shopping or child care, so how am I really going to talk seriously about this sexual issue in an intimate setting? That's very challenging for me. So we incorporated the speaker-listener technique. It's a simple reflective listening technique, and we teach it to couples. It's basically stopping, listening, reflecting back information, and then sharing a floor and taking turns, just delivering messages and paraphrasing back to build empathy. And what we have in the intervention is a model for couples to see, and we can just at least show the image in the first minute or so.
It makes me feel disrespected.
So what the couple would see is a model of a couple engaging in this technique together. The added benefit of using video in a multimedia format such as this is that we can put the skills across the screen, and as the people in the video are engaging the skills, there's a highlight, so they're sort of learning at multiple levels. And then after seeing that model, the couple would practice the technique with the help of the facilitator.
That it feels like I'm not.
All right.
And in the how-to section, there's actually also a series of 10 brief vignettes that show the facilitator how to teach the technique and how to get out of the top 10 issues that'll come up the first time you try to teach the technique effectively and moderate it with a couple.
Okay. All right, so the next thing I think we're going to look at is the gender differences game.
Yep, that sounds good.
So the first page is not a game; it's just a discussion. So.
So this is it's an interactive game where what we're trying to do is normalize stereotypes, some gender norms in some cultures, and we don't have time to have a discussion of cultural competence and, of course, adaptations that would need to be made depending on the community in which you're using this. But so these are based on generalizations in heterosexual relationships, and the goal is to be able to bring to the surface some of those issues that couples keep underneath communications. So this has to do with the couple would sit together and they would talk through these issues and identify whether or not they're true for them. And then they'll apply the speaker-listener technique to discuss one of these issues. They each get to select one that is getting in the way of their relationship and their ability to communicate and be safe with each other. And so again, to bring just to the surface what the issues are, and then to practice the speaker-listener or the communication technique to deal with these issues, moving towards being able to negotiate safer sex.
And I think that the last activity we're going to show is the social support network map, which they do in the final session.
So at the end of behavior change theories, we know that you need information, you need skills building, you need to practice, you need positive reinforcement to continue to behave in positive ways, to reduce your risks and to improve your health. But you also need to build a network of relationships or identify people in your network to help support and maintain that behavior change. So something that we use a lot in social work classrooms is the idea of a social support map or a social support network, and then mapping that network. And it can be particular to an issue. So in this case, it's particular to HIV prevention and risk reduction. So the couple takes turns, she and then he, and then together, building a map of people in their network. And those people can be identified as green, yellow, or red, very supportive or helpful with respect to their behavior change and maintaining that, or not so helpful, because we know from social support theory that you can have positive and negative supports. And the important thing is identifying whether they're positive or negative, and then your perceptions about them. So we developed this map for both partners, and then they developed the map as a couple together, because if she has a negative support that he sees as positive, there needs to be some negotiation there for who the final network is. And this is a tool, as Jess was saying, that we also use in some of the advanced practice classrooms, and in fact we're launching it in the next 2 weeks to be accessible to all of our fieldwork agencies at the School of Social Work. So that's over 400 agencies in the New York City area, and to all of our second-year students. So that its application, of course, could be identified as addressing any particular issue. It could be for women who are trying to leave their relationships because they're violent. It could be for someone who's trying to decide whether or not to enter an assisted living facility. They're, across the range of contemporary social issues and fields of practice at the School of Social Work. So each of these elements, this one is one that we're launching soon, but each of these elements can be used in the social work classroom, and we're very excited about the fact that faculty are taking them and using them there.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
yep, thank you.
Now we're going to switch gears and look at a project that talks about the legal system as it is now. And the professor whose project this is Professor Conrad Johnson. Professor Johnson spent many years as the attorney in charge of the Harlem Neighborhood Office of Legal Aid Society of New York. He also served as the director of clinical education at the law school from 92 to 96. He co-founded the law school's Fair Housing Clinic, and he also co-founded Lawyering in the Digital Age, which is a class that explores the impact of technology on law practice. So CCNMTL has been working with Professor Johnson and his students in Lawyering in the Digital Age to produce the first ever collateral consequences calculator, and you're going to see what that actually is in a moment.
Great, thanks, Jessica. So I'm standing because my wife suggests I think better when I'm standing up. You can figure out why. I'm happy to have this opportunity to talk about our project and to publicly thank CCNMTL, and in particular Jessica Rowe and Zarina Mustafa and Anders Pearson, who've been working very hard with us over the last couple of years to turn out this project, which we're going to launch this semester. I also want to say that I co-direct the clinic with two great colleagues, Mary Zulak, who's a clinical professor at our law school, and Brian Donnelly, who's a director of legal education at the law school, director of educational technology at the law school, and both of them are here today. I want to say hi, nice to see you. And so if there's anything you like in what I say, chances are good they thought of it. Anything you don't like, chances are good it was my idea. So let me tell you about the need for the calculator. This is not the calculator, but it is a precursor to it. New York has a wonderful chief judge, Chief Judge Judith S. Kaye. She's a Barnard grad, of course. And in 2005, she took a step back, looked at the legal profession, and realized that legal professionals had developed silos of information. We'd become specialists. We don't share our information well, and ultimately, the public suffers for what is essentially a knowledge management problem. And she wanted to illustrate how that occurs and try to do something about it. So she held a colloquia up at the Judicial Institute in White Plains. She invited 50 judges, 50 practitioners, 50 legal academics to come up to White Plains for a day and talk about one manifestation of that knowledge management problem. And that manifestation was the collateral consequences. Excuse me. So let me tell you a little bit about collateral consequences. Most of you know the direct consequences of a conviction: jail, a fine, parole. Right? Lawyers are charged with telling you about those direct consequences, and judges have the responsibility to explain them to you if you're accepting a plea. Fine. But many people say that the collateral consequences, as opposed to the direct ones, can be more severe, more important than the direct consequences. So what are some of these collateral consequences? Deportation, loss of public housing, loss of your employment licenses, denial of the right to vote, loss of subsistence benefits, changes in visitation, the list goes on and on. The problem is that because collateral consequences occur across a wide variety of substantive areas, it is really difficult for anybody, no matter how hardworking they are as a judge or a prosecutor or a defense attorney, to really understand how those consequences play out. To put it bluntly, prosecutors are charging the public with crimes, defense counsel are counseling people about the consequences of crimes, and judges are sentencing and accepting plea deals in the dark. That is to say, without really knowing what the collateral consequences are. And under the current state of the law, judges are protected from doing that. They are, in fact, there is no requirement for them to discuss collateral consequences. And if you, God forbid, sir, were my client, if you don't raise the collateral consequences with me, I'm under no obligation as your attorney to discuss it with you. So whereas ignorance of the law may be no excuse for you, in this instance, the law protects ignorance for me. Can we guess who wrote those laws? And this is, as long as you understand the numbers, in New York City alone, last year, there were nearly 1 million criminal cases calendared in New York City alone, which means today, if you stay for the course of today's conference, thousands of people will go through this system, and none of them will be advised about their collateral consequences. Okay, so Judge Kay realizes this is a problem. She has the colloquium. It's a resounding success. She forms a committee to decide how to continue the conversation. I'm on that committee. We get the usual ideas. Let's hold another colloquium. Great, but we can't do that every day. But we do have another one, and it was great. Let's publish a book. Sure. The market is very small, the costs are high, and the information is stale the moment you publish it. All right, and then some fool, that would be me, says, why don't we have an online resource? It'll be like a content management system, that'll be manned by the experts in the field. It'll be free, it'll be searchable, it'll be updatable, it'll be everywhere you are. She says, great idea, go do that. So we did that. And what you're seeing here is that first iteration. This is the 4 C's collateral consequences website. You see in the left-hand corner over there the substantive areas where the collateral consequences play out. And if you were to go into any one of them, we're going into immigration. You'll see that we go behind this HTML page to a content management system, and you don't have to go into any of those, Jessica, but you get a summary of how collateral consequences play out, in this case in immigration, and you'll see the best articles, cases, links, other resources from an expert in the field to help you sort of sift through this area, very complicated area. This is great. It's a very popular website. If you go to Google right now and you type in collateral consequences, you will see that this website comes up second, only behind the Wikipedia article about this website, which was done by one of our enterprising students. So that's great. Then the judge says, this is wonderful. I love this. But wouldn't it be great if there were a, what's the Latin word, gizmo that would allow prosecutors and judges and defense counsel to see at a glance what the collateral consequences were across these substantive areas. And we say, great idea, Judge. Good luck with that. And she says, no, when I say, wouldn't it be a good idea, what I mean is, wouldn't it be a good idea for you to make it? And then we said, help, and we got help from CCNMTL. And so we developed the collateral consequences calculator, and what you see on the right is a long disclaimer, which is very important. But what you see on the left is the entire penal code set out by word, by number, and through a handy little autofill search bar up there so that you could get to any of the 500+ portions of the penal code and do the following. So let's go to petit larceny. You'll see that what you see at a glance in this beta version is we're tracking 2 substantive areas, immigration and housing, public housing, and you get these turnbuckles that allow you to see in somewhat greater depth or less depth, if you're not interested, what the collateral consequences are. That's actually another version of this that's has a lot more information that that's on the drawing board but soon to be released that would allow you to go out to some link pages from here that allow even more depth. But the point is, the words are sparse, the visual spacing is sparse, and that's to accommodate the high-paced world of arraignments and in-court work, to recognize that the user is going to be scanning, and to allow for additional areas to be added. As you look at this, there's also a comparison feature, and the comparison feature here allows you to compare the consequences with pettit larceny with the consequences for grand larceny in the first degree, and as with the other ones, you can expand the turnbuckles and see that naturally there are more consequences. The consequences are more severe for grand larceny. I will point out that one of the impetus for us to do this is it doesn't follow that the more severe the crime, the more severe the consequences. That's one of the things that really is bedeviling. Turnstile jumping, possession of infinitesimally small amounts of marijuana, not for sale but for possession, trespassing, or as it's known in the housing projects, hanging out, can all lead to incredible consequences that you would never imagine. And so there's a great deal of not just darkness in this, but misinformation and counterintuitive thinking that we're trying to overcome by going through this. Okay, so what do our students do? You know, part of the triangle is, of course, public-faced, but it's also, part of it is educationally faced. Our students have a chance to really do something that meshes perfectly with our central goal, which is to demonstrate the intersection of technology with law practice and the profession. So this is perfectly on point for us. It gives our students an opportunity to hone some of their lawyering skills. They interview judges, prosecutors, district attorneys. They work with programmers and experts and negotiate how this thing could look or could work so it's both accurate, easy to use, programmable, and ultimately available to folks. They learn to really navigate in two worlds, and as you may know, law organizations have now moved to incorporate technology, slowly, painfully. But the way it works is, in any legal organization, public or private, government or not, you've got the IT people and the lawyers, and a big gulf between them. And very few people are able to walk in both worlds. We believe, and we try to teach and turn out, people who are able to walk in both worlds, because we think people who understand law and technology will be both more effective as lawyers and innovative leaders in the future. So Jessica's going to tell you a little bit more about how this works, and then I'm going to tell you about where we're headed.
Okay, I'm going to do this really fast because we're running out of time for this session, but I wanted to talk about why this is so innovative. You look at this and you think, well, this is so helpful. Hasn't someone done this before? And everyone asks me that, actually, and the answer is no, there's nothing like this out there. And the reasons for that are multiple, but there are a couple main ones, and one reason that this doesn't exist anywhere else is that you can't look this stuff up. It has to be based on expert opinion because it's not written into the penal code. It's based on precedent. It's not something that you can just get your programmers to go and mine somebody else's big explanation, big database of this stuff. So we had to work with Conrad and his students and their legal experts to even get the information that we based this on. And then the second reason that this is not something that's terribly easy to do is that it is something that even if you made it and you had all the information and you just wanted to put it up there as like a book essentially online, it would change in about 8 months. And so that's such an insurmountable problem that most people haven't attacked it. But our programmer, Anders Pearson, had a wonderful idea, which was to base what we are displaying on the screen here on a logic tree. And I'm not going to show you my crazy visualization of the logic tree because we don't have time this morning, but basically what's going on behind the scenes here is that there are hundreds and hundreds of rules, all of which are essentially syllogisms that say, you know, if X is Y and Y is Z, then X is Z. Only for X and Y, substitute like paragraph-long legal phrasing. So that's how this works, and one of the reasons why that's so exciting is that it means that if you make a change high up on the logic tree, it will cascade throughout the system. So this is actually something that can be updated in an effective way. So if the law changes, you can change it once and it'll show up everywhere that it's relevant. And so that's what our goal is at any rate. We're still testing it, but it seems to be working really well. So
the tree works great.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry you're not going to see this full color extravaganza because the cascading of this is really an amazing thing. My idea was, let's have a database, you know, we'll fill in all the fields, and they said no. And I said, no, come on, really? And I could be persuasive, and I was persuaded that I was wrong because there was something better out there that will allow for the kind of flexibility that we need in an ever-changing field. And so I'm very, very pleased to have this working behind us. So let me tell you a little bit about where we're going with this. And to do that, I'll just end with a story. Last week, our clinic was honored with an award was presented by the Legal Aid Society down at the Bar Association for other projects outside of this one. Yes, we do other things too. And so we go down there, and it's in the big hall at the Bar Association. And the drill is the head of the Legal Aid Society says, and so-and-so did such and such, and everybody goes, yay. And then you walk off to the side, and Chief Judge Kaye stands there with a giant piece of glass, and you stand around it for your photo opportunity. So this is great. So people go through this, and then Mary and Brian and I got our turn, and we walk up to the side, and Chief Judge Kaye is standing there, and I'm holding it, and she's holding it, and she says, so how's my class? I said, your class is great, Judge, although I did think it was my class. And they're ready, they're working hard for you, and they're ready to talk to you about the stuff that they've been doing. She says, well, that's great. I'll be down from Albany at the end of the month. I'll be doing my State of the Judiciary address shortly thereafter, which is where she pulls together the governor, the attorney general, all the chief judges to talk about where things are headed. I said, that's great. And she says, so I want to meet with you because I want to talk about these projects. There are 2 projects. And we said, that's fine. She said, so in that meeting, am I going to be happy? Yes, Judge, you're going to be happy. Am I going to be really happy? Yes, Judge, you're going to be really happy. She says, no. Am I going to be really, really happy? Now, for those of you who don't speak Judge, let me translate. That means, Conrad, I want to launch this thing this semester so that I can make sure it is well promoted and in use before I leave office. Is that going to happen? To which the only acceptable answer is, yes, Judge. Thank you.
All right, so we only have a very, very short amount of time, but I want to thank Dr. Witte and Professor Johnson for being here, and I want to say that we, as always, are actively seeking projects, so if this presentation has sparked ideas for you, please visit our website and read about our other partners and our other projects. Also contact me, and I think that we can open the floor up for questions. All right, so yes. Are we handing microphones? Okay. Okay.
Here it is.
Oh, there we go.
Hi. Okay, good. So my question is in relation to the last presentation. Having spent some time checking out the law world and its use of technology, I realize my sense is that it is a tough sell. And so I was curious what impact, if any, your project has had on the rest of Columbia Law School's faculty. And then also, I know there's another branch of the school that deals with intellectual property in an area called cyber law. And in particular, a professor that I know of named Eben Moglen. And I was curious, has there been any interaction between the efforts that you've been doing in introducing education into the process of teaching law and what they do?
Well, I think answer it by saying for this to have an effect out in the world, it has to be launched. And one of the reasons we're very pleased to be working with the Chief Judge is it's great when the Chief Judge says, launch it, and now to all of her, the people who work for her, use it. I will also say that in developing this, we had to go we wanted to go talk with the people who would be in the target audience, the judges, the prosecutors, the defense counsel. I spent the summer doing 3 judicial seminars. It's like judge camp up at a little resort, and you go up and you talk to rooms like this filled with judges who want to know about this kind of stuff. So all I can tell you so far is that the need is great. The awareness has risen since Judge Kaye has taken up this challenge. The American Bar Association, the New York State Bar Association, the City Bar, County Lawyers Association have all taken up collateral consequences as centerpieces of their initiatives. I know that judges can feel differently about this, but most really want to know what's going on, and they will, I think, welcome this product because it's free to use and may make their lives easier. I'm sure there are going to be things we learn about how to make it easier, and there'll be some who'll never want to use it. The second part of your question about how to work with other folks in the law school, I think is a longer answer, but Eben, who is a friend and somebody I'd love to work with, and I are very happy to try and have examples like this to work with, because you can talk about introducing people to technology in theory, but until you have the real tools to work with and show how it can be used in the classroom, it's a little more abstract than it needs to be.
More questions? Yes? We'll wait for the microphone. Okay. Let me also just say about what was asked before, that I've been getting calls from all over the U.S. about this, even though it hasn't launched, just because people can Google it and see there's something out there and they want to know what it is. But okay, yes.
This logic tree concept, it sounds like you are just developing this, or it's just being developed as a concept. Is it well established, or do the bugs have to be worked out of it? Can be used for other programs where large databases are going to be handled?
I believe it's already in use in the world of health. I think that it's in use for drug trials, actually. So in that sense, it's not new. It's new to the legal world. It's not new to the world in general. So, but it's very different depending on what field it's applied to. I mean, our issue is that we don't really have facts. We have opinions about the greater and lesser possibility of things. So most of our work is categorizing things. Is this real? You know, is this probably going to happen, or maybe going to happen to your client? I think with things that are like a definite yes or no, it's a lot easier to apply this kind of logic. I hope that answers your question. Yes?
I just have a question about the calculator here. As far as the criminal charge, is there a way to view the consequences across the categories for a particular charge? As we have it right here, there's a cascade of 2 different items in comparison, but if somebody were to receive a criminal charge, would they be able to see all of the consequences, the collateral consequences for that charge in one fell swoop?
Right. We sort of clicked through it quickly. You could take away the comparison and just, if I understand your question correctly, just see the one. So here's probably an example coming up.
Coming up.
And the idea right now is just to track it against over the schemes of housing, public housing and immigration, which are 2 of the big ticket items. Mm-hmm. Over time, if this is successful, we would also then track it over the other substantive areas, so that you could see family consequences, employment law consequences, civic participation consequences, so you could see whether you're going to lose the right to vote, or be disqualified from a jury, or lose your employment license, and have the kids taken away and be evicted, and all the and then deported all at once. I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
All right, I think we have to close now, but I'm happy. I'll be here all day. I'm happy to answer anyone's questions off the stage.
Evaluation. Oh.